The topic is indeed the link between advances in technology and what that means for astronomy. And our current generation of telescopes, the Very Large Telescope of ESO on Paranal, the ALMA array at 5,000 meters in the Andes, and the future extremely large telescopes are all possible because of rather recent advances in technology. And they allow us to study the universe with unprecedented sensitivity and with unprecedented sharpness, resolution we call it. I would mention 3 or 4. The very first image of an exoplanet was taken in 2004 by one of the telescopes of the Very Large Telescope on Paranal. This was still a pretty gassy planet around a fairly faint star, but there is an image. Many discoveries were made early on of exoplanets with a technique called the radio velocity technique. And then more recently, of course, we've had the very fascinating studies by ALMA of forming stars and forming planets around them. And very recently, with the optical telescopes again, the discovery of Proxima b and the TRAPPIST planets, for example. And in addition, the Very Large Telescope has brought enormous advances in our understanding of the galactic center black hole, this monstrous black hole in the middle of our Milky Way, and also of the deep universe, how everything happened, how galaxies formed, and how the universe is put together. Yes, and it may happen in the next 10 to 20 years, maybe even sooner, you never know. We always try to be faster. But the technology that we now have, and this is also a topic in my lecture this evening, is that in the past 20 years we've transformed what was philosophy and perhaps science fiction. Could there be life elsewhere in the universe? Are there other worlds? We've transformed this into a science. We now know, we have direct proof that maybe as close as 2,500 stars have planets around them. And if you look at these discoveries, it's becoming very obvious that nearly every star is surrounded by planets, many of them rocky, like the Earth. We have various explicit examples very recently. And if you then think about our Milky Way alone, which has 200 billion stars, many of them will have planets. That's such an enormous number of planets that the question whether we are the only planet in the entire galaxy, and perhaps in the entire universe, which has 100 billion galaxies, becomes a little funny. It's rather unlikely. It's possible that we're the only one, all alone in the big universe. But it is actually more likely, as we've seen in the past, the Earth was not the center of the universe. We go around the Sun goes around the Milky Way center. The Milky Way is one of 100 billion Milky Ways, but that we're not very special. I mean, it's tough to take it, the ego must accept it, but it's very likely that there is life, and we're making a science out of it. I believe so. I think if we find definite proof that there is, I call it biological activity, life elsewhere in the universe, could even be on Mars, that one of the Mars missions in the next few years finds evidence for something on Mars, but it could well be around one of these newly found exoplanets. If we find evidence, not necessarily for intelligent life as we know it, with which one could in principle communicate, but if we find evidence for forests on another planet, then it's clear there is a lot of it in the universe, and that would be totally transforming our view of ourselves. I think we know so little about the universe, and it's now so tantalizing that we may not be alone, that we should try all the methods to try to find out what's out there. And that includes listening to radio signals, trying to find artificial ones, but it also includes all the active work we do with the telescopes to try to find planets, try to characterize, as we call it, their atmospheres. Do they have an atmosphere? Is there in an atmosphere around another planet, around another world, around another star, I should say? If there is evidence for ozone or methane, our biology suggests that that can only be there. The most likely explanation for that kind of molecule in an atmosphere is that there is biological activity. So I think it's great. And the new telescope of ESO, the extremely large telescope with its 39-meter diameter main mirror, may well find evidence for molecules in the atmospheres of exoplanets that betray the evidence of life. And I think it would be highly ironic if a telescope that is located in one of the most lifeless parts of our world, our own world, the Atacama Desert, would find evidence for life somewhere else in the universe. It will be fun. I believe we need to do both. There are certainly things that in the past we could only do by sending someone there and pushing a button, so to speak. Same with telescopes. We can now run some of them remotely from somebody's home because we have all the infrastructure and the technology to do it. In the past you had to go to a mountain and observe. And same with traveling or sending probes to planets in the solar system. For the exoplanets we're discussing just now, we have no technology to travel to the stars in any reasonable amount of time. In our solar system, we can contemplate sending humans to the moon, obviously. It's been done, we should do it again. To Mars, very difficult, but not impossible. And I think it's part of our society's drive that we always try to discover more about the world we live in, basically, or the universe we live in. And I think part of that will have to come by pushing also manned space missions. So I'm all for missions to Mars, but it's hard. I think it would be quite interesting, and it might even be smart, because all our eggs are in one basket, as one says in the English or in the American. We're all on one planet, and it's pretty fragile, as we all know. So to spread the risk around a bit would not be bad to have a couple other homes. Spain has developed extremely strongly over the past decades in astronomy. It's host to the best site for telescopes in the in Europe, the La Palma site. It's the best site in Europe. One could argue whether the Canary Islands are sort of geographically really with Africa or with Europe, but we know they're part of Europe, part of Spain. And the Institute Astrofísica de Canarias has built a fantastic set of telescopes there. The Gran Telescopio Canarias is the largest fully steerable optical telescope in the world, and all of that has been done by Spain itself. Spain is a joint ESO, European Southern Observatory, in 2006. So we celebrated the 10 years anniversary last year and looked back at what Spain had contributed and what it had sort of used the telescopes for, and it's clear Spain is a very constructive member, very supportive, involved in all aspects of ESO's program, both through the astronomers, but also the Spanish industry has made contributions to the Very Large Telescope, to the construction of ALMA, to the studies for the ELT, and to other aspects of the program. So that progress is impressive, and I believe it will continue. The answer is a resounding yes. I believe this myself. You might say, Tim, you're not objective, you're the DG of ESO, so obviously you think it's a great organization. Yes, I think it's a great organization, but external committees that review our program have also concluded that in the past decade ESO has now gone ahead and is arguably the world-leading the world-leading organization for ground-based astronomy. Punkt, as you would say in German. That's it. Because there is no organization that has this level of program all in one hand. I think a society that stops supporting research will stagnate. Everyone uses the social media and the latest mobile phones. They don't come just out of the heavens. It requires engineers and scientists to invent the technologies that then make it possible that the mobile phone that you have is a machine like this, which is incredibly powerful computer, a camera, everything else. So we need to continue to invest in fundamental research. Part of it can be short term. It's called innovation. Do something, give me something new tomorrow. But most of the most important advances have actually come from unexpected corners, including from astronomy. To be able to filter the radio signals that come from the universe. Techniques were developed to really reduce background noise and interference, and all of that makes it possible that everyone in the world has a phone. You can talk to a colleague, but you don't listen, you don't hear what I'm saying on my phone to someone else in the world. All of that is possible because astronomers and physicists worked out some of the basic techniques, not because they were thinking of mobile phones, but because they were trying to solve a fundamental scientific problem. And there are many examples. And therefore, we need to make sure that our society cares for its people. You mentioned poverty and all these things. But if we don't continue to invest in science and technology, we're doomed. So you need to do both. And the governments of the ESO member states, including Spain, have fully understood this. And they're very excited about the program we have and the new telescope we're building. They actually increased the contributions during the financial crisis to make this possible because they realize technology is important. And astronomy, as you've seen yourself, is a very visual science. It drives technology. It's a visual science. The general public is really fascinated by, and rightly so, by the questions we've been discussing in this interview, life in the universe. So it's win-win, and it attracts younger people to the sciences. They don't all have to become astronomers, thinking about exoplanets, but we do need boys and girls that become engineers or become scientists.